Or in the lobby. Resuming debate, the honourable member for Oakville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be sharing my time today with the member from Mississauga East, Cooksville. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak in favour of the Paris Agreement and the government's motion for Canada to participate in its global attempt to reduce climate change. On December 12, 2015, Canada and 194 other countries reached the Paris Agreement, an ambitious and balanced plan to fight climate change. The new agreement will strengthen efforts to limit the global average temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursue further efforts to limit the increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. In addition, the Paris Agreement aims to foster climate resilience and lower greenhouse gas development. Mr. Speaker, there has been much said in the House on a national level about the benefits and risks of the Paris Agreement. I thought I would bring the discussion to a sub-national level and focus on the role of local municipal governments, the roles of public and private corporations, and the role of civil society using the lens of my community of Oakville. It will require all of us working together to achieve the aims of this agreement, and I believe my community of Oakville is an exemplar of the cooperation that will be required. Oakville's vision is to be the most livable town in Canada. The town's 2005 Environmental Strategic Plan recognizes that our quality of life rests on the equality of our environment and on our respect for our natural and cultural heritage. In 2015, the town received Milestone 5 of the ICLI Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners GHG Reduction Program. This capstone achievement reflected the town's accomplishment of the target of a 20% reduction in corporate GHG emissions by 2014 from 2004. Oakville is only one of 30 Canadian municipalities to have achieved a Milestone 5 level. Council has now reset the energy and GHG reduction targets to ensure the town is continuing to achieve measurable results. An example of this plan is the iTree 2016 study of Oakville's urban forest. Mr. Speaker, there are 2 million trees in Oakville. Oakville's urban forest canopy coverage is about 28%. In Oakville, the total value of annual home energy savings provided by the tree canopy is $1,800,000. As a result of these energy savings, about 2,200 tons of carbon emissions are avoided each year, with an annual carbon value of $172,000. Oakville's trees sequester about 5,900 tons of carbon each year, with an associated annual carbon value of $460,000. Oakville's tree root systems store approximately 148,000 tons of carbon, with an associated carbon value of $11.5 million. We can grow our tree canopy by 50% in years to come. With over 185 kilometers of on- and off-road cycling paths, over 300 kilometers of trails, 1,420 hectares of parkland, 31 waterfront parks, and more than 200 parks with playgrounds and sports fields, Oakville has recreational opportunities for everyone. While our local tree canopy expansion plan will contribute to Canada's Paris Agreement commitments, it will also continue to provide a superb living environment for residents. These are win-win carbon reduction strategies. Oakville Council has confirmed its commitment to support efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions globally by harmonizing specific town reduction targets to match those of global targets. Mr. Speaker, the largest public corporation in Oakville is Halton Healthcare. The new Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital is a thoughtfully designed, state-of-the-art centre of healthcare excellence. Although 8 stories tall and 1.6 million square feet in size, OTMH is highly energy efficient, incorporating many innovative technologies to reduce its carbon footprint. The energy-efficient design measures put in place avoid electrical consumption of 16,700,000 kilowatt-hours annually, enough energy to supply 1,850 homes in Oakville with electricity annually. They are saving dollars and reducing GHG emissions. The new building, LEED Silver Standard, has been recognized by the High Performance New Construction Incentive Program for achieving a Tier 3 level of more than 50% energy savings. Construction of the new OTMH included a 500 kilowatt solar array, which was donated as a gift to the hospital by Hatch Industries. To date, Halton Healthcare has received energy payments totaling $154,000, while saving approximately 290 tons annually of GHG emissions compared to natural gas power generation. These are win-win carbon reduction strategies. Mr. Speaker, the largest private corporation in Oakville is Ford Canada. Ford is part of an automotive industry that is in active transition to a low-carbon economy. The auto manufacturing sector is a key driver for Canada's economy, contributing significantly to our nation's manufacturing GDP and providing tens of thousands of direct and indirect high-paying jobs. Auto manufacturing is highly energy efficient, emitting less than 1% of industrial GHG emissions in Ontario and half of the GHG emissions per vehicle compared to European auto manufacturing, an important consideration as we move forward with globally competitive carbon reduction targets. Auto is one of the largest green tech sectors in the world, investing more than $200 billion US in fuel efficiency and green tech through to 2025. Another $100 billion US is being invested in electric vehicle development. Many of the innovative energy efficiency strategies are being designed and tested right here in Canada. Through an unprecedented year-over-year improvement plan, the 2025 model year vehicles, our cars, are projected to consume 50% less fuel than the 2008 vehicles. Post-2011, this will result in an estimated cumulative reduction of 266 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions. To assist the industry, policies that educate and increase consumer demand for these new vehicle technologies will be critical to ensure the adoption of alternative energy and electric vehicle choices. Finally, a cautionary note, Mr. Speaker, as we push forward with the Paris Agreement, let's remember that auto manufacturing is highly trade exposed. That is why the design of the Pan-Canada Framework for Climate Change and avoiding layering of subnational regulations under federal regulations is critically important to the competitiveness of Canada's auto manufacturing and ultimately the achievement of Canada's economic and environmental objectives. Care must be taken to maintain and grow Canada's manufacturing footprint to avoid the migration of many thousands of jobs through carbon leakage to other jurisdictions which have weaker climate policy commitments. With care, this can be a win-win agreement for auto. Finally, Mr. Speaker, let's address the role of civil society. In my community of Oakville, I found over 40 environmental groups and agencies that residents of Oakville are directly involved with, most with a focus on climate change. Hundreds of Oakville residents are engaged, making a difference globally by making change happen locally. At a climate change consultation I hosted in August, over 150 Oakvillians came out to talk with me and their neighbours about their concerns. We had 10 table topics, including many specific to the Paris Agreement, such as international cooperation and commitments and carbon pricing. Attendees supported the Paris Agreement. Some wish it went further, faster, and are prepared for disruptive economic consequences. Others support the direction but want to ensure that our economy and jobs transition smoothly to a less carbon-dependent economy. But they all want positive action. I believe every Oakvillian wants to ensure that we conserve our environment to leave as rich and sustainable an environment for our children as we inherited from our predecessors. I believe, based on the decisions and commitments of our town council, our public and private enterprises, and based on Oakville residents' engagement with civic groups and feedback from my consultations, that the vast majority of Oakvillians support the Paris Agreement and want this government and this House of Parliament to proceed to join in the global fight against climate change. Mr. Speaker, I don't think our children and grandchildren will be concerned with which political party we represent in 2016. They will want to know why we didn't act when we could to guarantee them drinkable water, breathable air, and a living environment. Mr. Speaker, I'll be supporting this agreement. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaires. The honourable member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, the member from Oakville must be familiar with the Ontario Liberal gas plant scandal, where an entire plant was relocated to save seats in the legislature. Would the member opposite be able to share with this House the number of tons of carbon that transfer would have put into the atmosphere, and whether or not this type of activity will see federally as well?
The honourable member for Oakville.
I think, Mr. Speaker, the most important thing to remember is that Ontario has already moved forward with the cessation of coal-producing plants. We're already seeing a dramatic decrease in smog days in Toronto and in my riding of Oakville. I think everybody in Canada agrees we need to move forward with a carbon pricing model. It's the most effective policy measure to drive climate action and the transformation of global energy systems towards cleaner alternatives. And as I said, people in Oakville support this direction.
Questions and comments? L'honorable député.
Honourable member for Bécancour-Nicolette Sorel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I listened closely to my colleague's intervention, but when he speaks of the Paris Agreement, well, it seems like we're well below what the Paris Agreement requires of us. For example, in Paris, there was a reference to 1990 levels, which Quebec has used as a reference, and has worked to reach targets compared to 1990 levels. We've seen that in the aluminum sector, the wood sector, the forestry sector, where levels have gone down by 78%. But now the government talks about simply referring to 2006 levels, the same targets as set by the Conservatives. So that's very little. It's too little. Should we not do like other countries in the world and refer to 1990 levels instead of the date that we're talking about today?
For Oakville.
I thank the honourable member for the question, and I will be responding in English. So there seems to be tension here. The NDP, others seem to want to see disruptive change. They want to change so fast on climate that job losses and economic losses can occur. And the Conservatives, on the other hand, seem to not want to make any changes. So I think we have found a very balanced solution here to move forward with carbon pricing, to move forward with an economy that is less carbon intensive and carbon required, but at the same time making sure that we transition and hold jobs and keep a strong economy as we move forward. That's the plan I think Canadians want us to implement.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
For his comments this afternoon on this very important topic. And I, in particular, take note with how he concluded his comments and his speech when he spoke about future generations. And we've heard a lot in this House over the last few days about the various different stakeholders and people who will be affected by this. But one particular group that I find as though we continually are neglecting in this discussion is the future generations. We've heard members opposite ask questions about what do they say to the seniors in their ridings who are going to be affected by a price on carbon? My question to my honourable colleague here is, what do we say to future generations if we don't do this? And how important is it that we get this right now so that future generations don't have to deal with it?
The honourable member for Oakville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for that question. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to have that conversation. I have children that are at all age groups right now. I do not want to be having this conversation with them in 10, 15, 20 years' time. I don't want to be having that conversation with my grandchildren. I don't think any member in this House wants to have a conversation about why we failed to address the problem of climate change when we had a chance to make a difference. That's why it's so important that we proceed with this direction. It's why important that the Paris Agreement and the Vancouver Accord be implemented. We owe this to future generations as much as we owe it to ourselves.
Resuming